Chapter 86. Outside the door, a burly security guard responded quickly and took out a whistle from his pocket to blow on it. In an instant, all the bare-chested men who were loading goods gathered together. It was a relatively old neighborhood in Causeway Bay, which was in the western suburbs of Johnford. The Green Bamboo Association, the largest underground organization in Sagan, had its ninth branch here. Howard Lane, the head of the Lane family, which was one of the Johnford Five elites, was the former president of the ninth branch. In his early years, Howard unified the underground forces in Sagan for the Green Bamboo Association, and then he came to Johnford with his subordinates to do legitimate business. His three sons managed the family business in an orderly manner. However, none of his three sons wanted to get involved with the Green Bamboo Association. It was actually his eldest son's son and his grandson, Simon Lane, who was constantly mingling with the people in the Green Bamboo Association. Hence, Howard passed the position of the ninth branch president to Simon. Even Kai had to show some respect to Simon. In the evening, Causeway Bay was particularly quiet. There were sexy and glamorous women on the street who were all dressed up. They smoked cigarettes, which created clouds of smoke. Groups of young men gathered together, chatting and laughing. Inside a luxurious private room in Sissy Bar, Crow was having a meal with several construction site bosses from nearby. Crow had blonde hair and a muscular body. He sat casually in his chair and arrogantly said, "It's still the same offer. Either you give me 700 grand, or we have nothing to talk about." 7700 grand? Crow, you're joking. Where can we find 700 grand? A construction site boss in his 40s took out about 15 grand in cash from his bag and put it on the table. He forced a flattering smile on his face and said, "You can take this 15 grand for now, and we'll start demolishing the row of dilapidated houses on Street 7. Causeway Bay had long been bought by the Dorsons, and now the Dorsons had given a strict order that a partial demolition must be completed within 3 months. Otherwise, the project would be handed over to other construction companies. Crow's people occupied the entire Causeway Bay, and they could not demolish the houses here at all. Thus, several construction site bosses came together to negotiate the demolition with Crow. Little did they know that this guy would make an exorbitant demand, asking for $700,000. Crow took out a cigarette from the pack of cigarettes on the table, put it in his mouth, and took out a pitch-black gun from his pocket. He aimed it at the construction site bosses. The bosses trembled in fear. Crow, this. Crow laughed heartily and aimed the gun at the cigarette before pulling the trigger. The muzzle emitted a blue flame and lit the cigarette. It turned out to be a lighter. Only then did construction site bosses finally relax. Suddenly, Crow slammed the lighter on the table. The loud noise startled the bosses. Crow coldly stared at them and said angrily, "You fuckers. Do you take me for a beggar? You're offering a mere 15 grand. The construction site boss who had spoken earlier wiped off his cold sweat and said, "Crow, 700 grand is too much. It's difficult for us." "Difficult?" Crow stood up, exhaled a thick smoke, and said, "Then let's get this over with." As he spoke, he overturned the table, causing the food on the table to scatter all over the floor. Then, he turned around and walked out. Chapter 87. Several underlings in the room who carried baseball bats immediately approached the construction site bosses. Upon hearing the screams coming from the private room, Crow danced with excitement as he hugged the waists of two hostesses. "Crow, those two women have woken up." A thin underling hurried over as he exclaimed. Half of his face was swollen, with traces of blood still not wiped clean from the corners of his mouth. Crow glanced at the thin youngster and frowned. "Did you touch them?" The thin underling said with a pitiful tone. "Those two women are so beautiful. I couldn't resist." "Damn it!" Crow kicked his underling's chest, sending him flying 3 meters away. "I haven't even touched them yet. And you dare to act first? Do you not respect me as your boss?" Crow scolded angrily. "Boss, I was beaten before I could even touch them," the thin youth said, feeling wronged. "Wait until I'm done enjoying myself. Then I'll hand them over to you. Tonight, we'll make sure they suffer. Crow snorted coldly, then walked into the elevator with the two hostesses. He pressed the button for the basement's third floor. The third floor of the basement was a dim warehouse. In addition to some miscellaneous items, there were several gambling tables. Some were playing roulette, while others were playing poker. There were about 20 people in total, all smoking and chewing gum. The entire warehouse was filled with smoke. In a small room in the corner, Hira was curled up on the sofa and hugging her knees while murmuring, "It's all my fault, Skate. I shouldn't have invited you to go shopping." Scotty held Hira's small hand and comforted her softly. "Rara, don't overthink it. We were targeted by someone. Even if you hadn't invited me to go shopping, we would have still ended up in this situation." Then, she blamed herself and said, "Truthfully, it's all my fault. After encountering the assassin last time, I should have been more vigilant." Hira lowered her gaze and said, "If only Nash were here." Scotty wrinkled her nose, grumbling, "That guy doesn't care about you at all. He said he'd protect you, but now he's gone somewhere else to fool around. Men are all the same." If Nash had accompanied Hira to the Lee's banquet during the day and went shopping with them at night, they would not have been kidnapped. Up until now, they still did not know who had kidnapped them. They had been shot with a tranquilizer gun, and although Scotty had regained some strength, her power was only 1/3 of what it was before. Hira pursed her lips and guiltily said, "It must be because of what I said before. He wants to prove himself, so he went out to earn money." Scotty was slightly stunned and asked, "What did you say to him?" "Nash asked me if I really liked money. He probably thinks I'm a materialistic woman." Hira propped her chin on her knees with a sigh. Scotty immediately became unhappy upon hearing this. "Isn't that obvious? Who doesn't like money? Walter is worth tens of billions, and he's still constantly making money. Why would he even ask such a stupid question?" Hira continued, "He said he didn't like money, and I asked him if not being able to earn money was his excuse." Scotty chuckled. "How did he respond to that?" "He said earning money was easy, and his starting point could be 100 million. I asked him if he knew what 100 million even meant, and then he stopped talking. He must have been hurt by my words. I asked him to accompany me to Mr. Lee's banquet and told him that the people who'd be in attendance were all influential figures. Getting to know a few of them would be beneficial. I guess he thinks I wanted him to curry favor with those rich people. That's why he got angry and didn't want to go to the banquet with us." When Hira mentioned these things, her mind was in turmoil. She now regretted what she had said to Nash back then. "I think what you said was fine. Although Nash is skilled, martial arts can't put food on the table. Iron Kick George Yancey, 8 Trigram Palm Jensen Guiane, and the others all submit to the wealth of the Watson family too. Besides, he's a grown man. So why is he so petty?" Scotty grew angrier as she spoke. "When we get out of here, I'll definitely teach him a good lesson." As soon as she finished speaking, the heavy iron door was pushed open. Crow walked into the room, unbuckling his belt as he did so. "Don't even think about leaving. Let me enjoy myself first." Chapter 88. Hira's face was filled with fear as she shrank back. Who are you? How much did my uncle pay you?" When she appeared at the Lewis family's estate the last time, her uncle had a surprised look in his eyes. Those assassins were definitely hired by her uncle. Her kidnapping this time must also have something to do with her uncle. After all, she had just won 1.5 million from them during the day. This must be her uncle's family's revenge. Crow threw the belt on the ground and chuckled. "What uncle? I don't know who your uncle is." Scotty stared coldly at Crow. "My grandfather is the head of the Martial Arts Association. If you touch me, my grandfather won't let you go." Crow laughed. "Those who have nothing to lose do not fear those in power. If your grandfather knows that we're from the Green Bamboo Association, he'll choose to turn a blind eye even if he knows that we've captured his granddaughter." Scotty was completely stunned. You people are from the Green Bamboo Association?" The Green Bamboo Association had a huge influence, with 18 branches throughout the country and over 30,000 members. On the surface, the Green Bamboo Association was a business association. However, Behind the scenes, they engaged in various illegal activities. Scotty remembered something and stared at Crow, questioning, "Are the lanes behind this?" Her grandfather had mentioned that there was a branch of the Green Bamboo Association in Johnford, and the president of the branch was the old head of the Lane family. Crow walked toward the sofa with a smile. "If I want to have fun with two women, do I need others to make arrangements for me?" Scotty's face turned pale, and she stood up to block Hira. "Just come at me. Don't hurt her." Crow glanced at Hira and then smiled. "That depends on whether you can satisfy me." He had no intention of harming Hira. Plus, tomorrow, he would release Hira unharmed. After all, Hira was the woman that Hunter was interested in. The Hills gave him 15 million just to get rid of Scotty. Crow pointed to the bed and said, "You know what to do, don't you?" Scotty trembled all over, and her face gradually lost its color. Hira anxiously said, "Please don't harm Scotty. We can give you however much money you want. We have 1.5 million. 1.5 million was not a small sum. Under normal circumstances, Crow might have agreed. Nonetheless, the Hills had promised him 15 million, which was equivalent to 10 times that amount. Crow remained indifferent and looked at Scotty with a sinister gaze. "Will you undress yourself? Or should I have my men help you with that? They would be more than happy to do so." Scotty looked at the people outside, and her frail body trembled uncontrollably. She gritted her teeth as she walked toward the bed. Then, she unzipped her dress from behind with her hands. Crow's eyes burned with desire when he saw her flawless skin. "Tsk. I've slept with so many women, but I've never seen a woman of such superb quality." Scotty was now only in her undergarments. Hira's heart was on the verge of collapsing. Then, she suddenly noticed a fruit knife on the coffee table. She clenched her teeth, grabbed the fruit knife, and stabbed it toward Crow. He reacted quickly and kicked Hira, sending her flying into the wall. She immediately lost consciousness upon impact. Crow sneered, "Stupid bitch. If it weren't for the fact that you're Hunter's woman, I would have my men take turns with you tonight." Scotty saw Hira being knocked unconscious and immediately rushed over. Crow grabbed Scotty's shoulder, but Scotty twisted her body and slapped him with a backhand. As the effects of the tranquilizer had not worn off yet, the force behind her slap was not strong. Crow did not dodge and let the slap land on his face. He seemed even more excited and directly carried her to the bed. "You beast, let me go." Chapter 89. Scotty struggled continuously, raining punches on Crow's chest. Crow burst into laughter. "Keep struggling. The more you struggle, the more excited I get." He threw her onto the bed and pounced on her directly. Scotty kicked the man, but he managed to grab her ankle. Her soft and smooth ankle only made him even more excited. Just as he was about to make further moves, sudden urgent knocks came from outside. Crow's face darkened, and he turned his head. "Can't you people see that I'm busy?" Boss, Salvatore and his men have surrounded Causeway Bay. The tattooed youngster outside spoke anxiously. Crow furrowed his brows, asking, "How many people did they bring?" Maybe over 100. "How many? Has that silly sov lost his mind?" Crow released his grip on Scotty's ankle, turned around, and walked out, informed the brothers to gather with their weapons. In Johnford, there were the 5 elite business tycoons and the 4 major underground forces. 5 years ago, Johnford only had 3 major forces. Then, a man named Salvatore Smith gathered a group of rough men who had come out of the mountains and established a freight company. In just 5 years, this freight company monopolized the entire freight market in Johnford. The other 3 major forces had the capability to eliminate Salvatore. However, Salvatore understood the rules. He had given them a lot of money over the years, and he only focused on the freight market. The 3 major forces felt that Salvatore had no ambitions, so they did not intervene much. Today, Salvatore dared to provoke the Green Bamboo Association. Crow wanted to see who gave Salvatore such courage. On the streets of Causeway Bay, over 100 members of the Green Bamboo Association gathered. They each held a baseball bat, golf club, or fitness arm strengthener. In this era of strict control over bladed weapons, they could only bring out these weapons. Salvatore and his men approached from the dark end of the street. The densely packed crowd made the members of the Green Bamboo Association uneasy. In a peaceful society, where comfortable times were enjoyed, such a grand scene was rarely seen. Crow had a cigarette in his mouth, and his face was filled with disdain. The authority of the Green Bamboo Association was not something that Salvatore could challenge. Even the other two major forces would not dare to provoke the Green Bamboo Association easily, considering it had 18 branches nationwide. On the side of the road there was a parked purple Koenigsegg without a license plate. The inside of the car could not be seen from the outside, but everything happening outside could be observed from the inside. Mr. Sky, the members of the Green Bamboo Association have firearms, and Salvatore's men are poorly equipped. Should I call my men over as well? A burly man in his 30s said in a low voice from the driver's seat. He was Zeno Hun, the second in command of the Dragon Tiger Gate, one of the 4 major underground forces in Johnford. Theo nodded lightly. Yes. Tonight, we must eradicate the Green Bamboo Association. Zeno took out his phone to make a call immediately. At this moment, Nash suddenly spoke. No need. Our goal is to rescue people, not to fight. Then, Zeno looked at Theo through the rearview mirror. Theo spoke. Do as Nash instructed. From now on, even when I'm not in Johnford, you must follow Nash's orders. Zeno nodded. Understood, Mr. Sky. Theo then turned to Nash and smiled. Nashi, I have several influential people in my family, so it's not suitable for me to show my face here. Chapter 90. Zeno quickly said, I'll accompany Mr. Nash. Mr. Sky, you stay in the car. Neither of you need to get out. I can handle this myself. Nash got out of the car and closed the door. On the way here, he listened to Zeno talking about the power of the Green Bamboo Association. It had 18 branches nationwide with over 30,000 members. Such power was indeed daunting. Backing the Dragon Tiger Gate was the Skies, and it had numerous branches across the country as well as a power that could rival the Green Bamboo Association. Nash did not want to cause conflict between the Green Bamboo Association and the Dragon Tiger Gate because of his own affairs. A clash between these two major forces would only disrupt social order. Nash quickly approached Salvatore and the others. Salvatore shouted to the people behind him, What's wrong with you guys? Walk faster. Instantly, the densely packed crowd quickened their pace to catch up with Nash. Inside the luxury car, Zeno spoke with a deep voice. Mr. Sky, who exactly is this Mr. Nash? I sense a strong aura of killing intent from him. Theo opened the sunroof, lit a Cuban cigar, took a puff, and said lightly, Don't ask about things you shouldn't be asking. Nash's identity is not something you should be concerned about. Upon hearing this, Zeno trembled inwardly. If these words had come from someone else, he would not pay much attention to them. However, these words came from the successor of the Sky family in Capitan. He had to take them seriously. Nash soon arrived in front of Crow. The group of underlings behind Crow immediately took a few steps forward. Crow raised his hand and said, No need. Then, the underlings stepped back. Crow took out a cigarette and put it in his mouth. He then took out a gun-shaped lighter from his pocket, aiming it at Nash's head. Zeno, who was in the luxury car, saw the situation. His face tightened. Mr. Nash is in danger. Theo exhaled smoke toward the sunroof. It's Crow who's in danger in this world. Anyone who dares to point a gun at Nash is as good as dead. At the same time, Nash slowly spoke up. Where's Hira? Crow, surprised that Nash showed no fear, could not help but feel a little bewildered. He released a safety catch, and his finger was about to pull the trigger. Salvatore shouted, Crow, don't you dare. Crow sneered and pulled the trigger. Blue flames emerged from the muzzle, with the flames only 5 centimeters away from Nash's nose. Nash did not even bat an eye. Salvatore secretly breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that the gun in Crow's hand was a lighter. Crow lit his cigarette, wearing a gloomy expression as he looked at Nash. What the hell are you? Nash enunciated each word. I'll ask you again. Where is Hira? Suddenly, Crow felt a chilling sensation all over his body. Looking into the cold eyes of the person in front of him, he felt an inexplicable sense of dread. Nonetheless, He had experienced countless fights and killings. Thus, he quickly suppressed his fear. He blew smoke onto Nash's face with a smile, saying, "I've had my fun with Hira. Her body is exquisite." Nash delivered a punch. The other man's head exploded like a watermelon that had fallen from a great height. A deathly silence took place. The members of the Green Bamboo Association and Salvatore's men were experiencing a mental shutdown. Even Zeno, who was in the luxury car, could not help but shiver. There were disputes and fights between the four major forces, but at most, they only resulted in severed hands or feet. Someone might accidentally kill another person, but they had never seen a person's head explode like a squashed watermelon. This intense visual shock made the scalps of the group of villains go numb. Theo laughed as he shook his head. It's never good to provoke anyone, but he just had to provoke my Nashi. In fact, their presence was unnecessary.